Miss Marvel! This trailer is full of style, energy, and a very unique perspective for an MCU show. It's looking like this show is gonna be something truly special, or if not that, at least be as good as the other MCU shows, which, let's be honest, they vary quite heavily in quality. But what if I told you that this show is actually gonna be the worst one of them all? Well, I imagine you'd be pretty shocked, but it all lies right here. Hey everyone, I'm RVRocks, and Miss Marvel is my favorite superhero of all time. Not only does she have one of the more unique origin stories I've seen come from Marvel, I am just a sucker for that superfan becomes one of the main team dynamic. So you might be thinking to yourself, if I like Miss Marvel so much, then why am I dreading the MCU Disney Plus series? Well, there's a few reasons, but it all boils down to one big issue. This is not this. You see, in the comics, Kamala Khan's power is known as polymorphing, or embiggening. Basically, picture something in the same vein as Luffy's devil fruit in One Piece, being able to change the size of your body and how that can be applied in some really wacky and really devastating ways. But in the MCU, it was looking a lot like they were changing up that power set to be something, well, more boring. There were like 4 or 5 different leaked images demonstrating some kind of new power set for Miss Marvel, and I hoped and prayed and desperately clung on to the slim possibility that these were fake or that the numerous delays were to change her power set. But today, the day I am currently filming this, they dropped a trailer for Miss Marvel confirming my worst nightmares. The supremely unique, interesting, and true to her character power set that Miss Marvel had become known for is being changed to make Kamala Khan into a purple Green Lantern. And let's be clear, typically I don't mind the MCU's changes to the comics source material if they're done right. The original Mandarin as an Iron Man villain was vaguely racist, but the retooled Mandarin in Iron Man 3 and Shang-Chi allowed for both a way to fit in that vaguely racist status naturally into the universe, as well as form one of the best realized villains in any MCU movie with the coolest weapons to boot. Civil War in the comics is a large-scale superhero all-out war, but in the movies they toned it down to be a more personal conflict for Tony Stark, keeping the Infinity Saga as a more tightly woven narrative. MCU Peter Parker is basically Ultimate Miles Morales, but with the circumstances of MCU Peter's origin, the story serves him just as well. Mantis, Thor, Thanos, Wanda, even the aforementioned Shang-Chi, all characters that I have fallen in love with who are so different from what they're like in the comics. I have always been in favor of changes as long as they make the story for the better. But unlike these other examples that I've listed, changing Kamala's powers does an active disservice to her character. Most of the Marvel superheroes who are women have this phenomenon of beautification to their powers. The guys can have cool powers and the ugly goofy powers, but the girls only ever get the cool ones. You don't see characters like the Blob or the Thing on the girls' side, and when you do, they're usually pretty deep cuts. Don't believe me? Let's look at the examples. A lot of the most prominent women at Marvel can be broken down into 3 categories. The super powerful ones with superpowers that are some kind of vague magic / energy that's a pretty color or does something that looks pretty. The ones who don't have powers, but rather are really good at one thing and wear a sexy outfit while doing their one thing. And then of course, the just a girl version of a male hero who gets to be cooler because they're a girl. Obviously, this argument is reductive and completely ignoring the individual relationships, motivations, and backstories of each of these characters, which really is the reason why they're interesting, but it gets really hard to ignore the broad strokes of the industry when just about any heroine can fall into these categories. However, Kamala, for lack of a better term, is probably the least picturesque prominent superhero woman at Marvel, and that was a very deliberate character choice. Kamala doesn't wear a skin-tight outfit, she's not that kill every guy in the room without breaking a sweat kind of cool, her powers aren't some pretty magic, her fist is the size of a truck, it's weird, she looks weird, and that's why she's cool. Everything about Kamala Khan, from her race, her religion, her gender, her power set, mindset and especially her social skills / interests is different. A lot of Kamala Khan's stories are similar to Spider-Man stories in the sense that they deal with her figuring out her life as a high school age teenager as well as all the superhero business. In these social settings, Kamala, well, she's not cool. At every opportunity, they reinforce this idea that Kamala is very much one of the outcasts at her school. She obsesses over superheroes, she writes fanfiction, she's a nerd. Through and through. And very often, Ms. Marvel stories, either as a main plot point or through subtext, tackle this idea of not being able to fit in. And credit where credit is due, it's looking more and more like these topics are something that the MCU show is actually really eager to handle. But they're missing a big, or dare I say, embiggened aspect of her character. The deliberate unsexiness of Kamala Khan's powers serves as a contrast to her peers in the superhero space, while also personifying that contrast amongst her peers in her day-to-day life. She is a Muslim practicing Pakistani American created in a time where a lot of people, very stupid people mind you, demonize those exact traits. And the fact that she is written as a flawed, complex character who isn't good at everything or that cool. The sweatiest of neckbeards couldn't even call Kamala a Mary Sue. But getting back to the main topic, her difference in powers also means we are going to be dealing with a loss of some truly iconic moments. One of the character-defining moments for Kamala Khan is that when she first gets her powers, she straight up transforms into Carol Danvers, in the old Ms. Marvel outfit and everything. Kamala was so ingrained with the idea that this is what a hero should look like. Obviously, you could just say that she transformed into Carol because Carol is super strong. But in the comic itself, she is pretty specific about how more so than wanting to be Carol because Carol's Carol, she wants to be Carol because Carol has the sexy outfit, and the amazing blonde hair, and the pretty powers, and the winning complexion. While serving as an idol and inspiration for Kamala, Carol also acts as a dark reflection of every insecurity Kamala Khan has about herself. Every reason Kamala thinks she can't be a superhero is reflected tenfold in Carol. And this scene where she transforms into Carol, it makes the Kamala Khan character. It consolidates everything I've been spouting out for the last 10 minutes into one scene. Now let's look at how the new show is handling this exact same scene. Oh, she's just dressing up as her? That's cool, I guess. I know the MCU doesn't have this version of Ms. Marvel, but like, we probably could have gotten closer than that. Is Brie Larson really that expensive? The main arguments I have been seeing in favor of this change can be boiled down to a general consensus of 4 points. The powers don't matter, which I hope by now you can see that they do. The CGI would be expensive and look bad. While I can't argue for the price, if it does look bad, that's kind of the point. Her having energy powers brings her closer to the other Marvels. Well, I guess this is technically true. Once again, the point is that she's different. And lastly, and arguably most prominently, she would be too similar to Mr. Fantastic. I just have to say, we could have 3 Iron Men, 3 magic people, and with the addition of new Kamala, 3 people with poorly described energy powers, but having 2 stretchy people is where we draw the line? We can have like 90 different named characters whose biggest attribute is that they shoot guns good, but we can't have a white middle-aged man and a brown teenage girl with completely different outfits both be stretchy? Do some kind of Marvel quip with it. She's stretchy too? I thought Richards was unique. And boom, it's buried, it's acknowledged, we're done. Not to mention, if that's the reason, then why not just change Reed's powers? The only difference is that he's been around for longer. I guarantee you John Krasinski over here is just gonna fade into the background with the other 3 and Doom on screen anyways. And even then, they use their powers in completely different ways most of the time. It's like saying Monkey D. Luffy and Plastic Man are the same character. And to clear the air for a moment, I know that Kamala and her unique stories could feasibly be tackled with her having different powers. Her main ability not being the embiggening doesn't necessarily mean they can't tackle the issues of not fitting in or how society looks at people of her color. But with her embiggening, they could tackle all of these issues in much more subtle ways while also having constant visual storytelling with the powers. And the worst part of all of this is, if it does well, it will change everything. If you go back and look at older comic books, there's always some weirdness. Did you know that Batman started out using guns, or that Superman couldn't originally fly? It's a staple of the medium. A lot of characters evolve over time. And let's say, hypothetically, Ms. Marvel blows the lid off of Disney+. Everyone loves it except for fucking weirdos like me. Little girls are buying a bajillion Ms. Marvel power fists. They're gonna change her powers in the comics. Remember how Spider-Man got organic webs in the comics because of the Raimi films? Or perhaps how every time a movie comes out, there's always some kind of ancillary comic run that has a very similar title coming out alongside it? Like it or not, comics are not as big as the movies. And if the movie stuff does well, they will change it in the comics. And this is why, despite me loving Ms. Marvel, I want this show to do bad. I know that this is such an unproductive mindset, but I don't want kids 100 years from now going like, did you know that Kamala Khan used to be stretchy as her power? Isn't that so weird? Like, call me crazy, but this borders on blatant character assassination. And like, let's look at this from the money angle. By making their new hot, diverse character have some wish fulfillment power, little girls are gonna love it. When in reality, the whole point is that her powers looked awkward. It just makes me angry because I fell in love with the character through that same kind of ancillary marketing. The first time I ever saw Kamala Khan was in LEGO Marvel's Avengers, in which she walked around in a funny way. Flash to 6 years later, and now I am desperately in love with the character, but wanting her first appearance on the big screen to fail. Because in complete honesty, I don't think the people making the product get the character. And what a sad, sad reality that is. But if you really get my channel, then you can subscribe to RVRocks and ring the bell, like this video, and comment your thoughts on Ms. Marvel. As stated throughout the video, I have very, very complex feelings towards this show, and I want to hear your thoughts either in the comments below or on Twitter at RVRocks. But before you do any of that, I have been RVRocks, and thank you so much for watching. See ya!